Hey guys, earlier today in the Facebook group, someone posted a question asking if anyone connects their Helix to a real amp and to a PA at the same time. That is exactly what I'm doing with my Helix. I put some comments on that post and mentioned that I might create a quick little video to show exactly what I'm doing and how I'm doing it. There were a few responses expressing interest in such a thing, so here it is. So first off, here is a look at my rig. The DT25 head and the divided by 13 212 cab on the left I picked up about a year ago. And I'll say this, they're awesome. If you've got either a Helix or a Pod 500 HD, there's a lot of things you can do. But even if you don't have a Helix or anything like that, if you just plug an instrument cable into your guitar straight into the front of this amp and turn it on, it's unbelievable. It's an amazing amp. I won't go into all the details about the amp, but look it up on your own if you like. I'll just say that if you ever happen to stumble across a used one of these locally, I would recommend grabbing it. So a few months later, because I fell so in love with the amp, I decided that if I ever saw a combo version of the DT25 for sale, I would grab that as well, just to have a smaller option for live use. And that has actually become sort of my default rig now, just the Helix and the combo on the left. I was a little lazy tonight, didn't feel like moving the amp and the rig away from the wall, so I just threw this little picture together quickly to kind of show what's going on in the back, and I'll refer back to this as we're walking through the signal chain. So here's one of my main patches. In fact, all of my patches are sort of structured just like this with some mild variations. So my guitar is going into the front of the Helix. I've got a distortion pedal for the first block in the chain. Then the send is taking my signal out of send number 1, and that's going to the input, the guitar input on the DT25. The return is then taking the signal coming from the send of the effects loop on the amp, and it's coming back to return number 1. So the signal has now gone through the preamp of the DT. And then after that, I've got kind of, pretty basic stuff here. I've got an EQ, I've got a noise gate, and the tube comp. I think this is actually a trick that I want to say, I think Steve Sterlacci posted a video about this, that he does this with a lot of his patches, and I tried it and liked it. One thing I found is that I think when you load the tube comp, by default, the threshold is somewhere around 0.5 or somewhere in the middle, and that was putting way too much compression into the sound. So I basically ran the threshold all the way up to 1, to the point where it's basically not doing anything, and then just kind of slowly walked it back until I hit a point where I heard the sound kind of start to change a little bit, and I heard a little bit of compression going on, and I was like, okay, that's just enough. That's what I want. So from there, I've got a chorus, I've got a delay. Now what's happening here, both of these outputs are showing that they're sending down to path 2A, but this one, I've actually got the level all the way down so that the signal is basically just going through this delay and then continuing on down the path here, and then it's hitting this mono reverb, which is currently bypassed. I'll get to that in a minute. So then we come down to path 2A, and then the path splits again here. So we've got another mono reverb block that's going out to the 1/4 inch. So that hits the 1/4 inch output over here. That goes back to the effects return on the DT, and then that's what you hear coming out of the amp. I've got the signal split here feeding a separate chain to the XLR outs, so I've got a stereo reverb and then I've got a dual cab block that's got the 112 Grammatico on one side and the 212 Interstate on the other side. This allows me to send, to use my sort of traditional mono guitar amp to generate my amplifier tone, but then I can still send sort of a enhanced, if you want to call it that, or a stereo signal to front of house to get a little bit bigger sound. We're a 4-piece band. I'm the only guitar. So I feel like there's a benefit to doing that. A little bit more about all the reverbs. One of the problems I ran into, and I think I've posted about it in the group here before, was that the reverb, the trails function in the Helix is a very useful function where you can turn a block on and off and obviously still get the decay of the last signal that went through it before you went into bypass. But what I used to do most of the time was, rather than bypassing a reverb, I would have a reverb block that was snapshot specific on the mix control. So I would have, for example, a rhythm guitar snapshot where the reverb mix was at, say, 15%. I'd switch over to my lead guitar, the mix would go up to 25%. The problem with that was when I switched back to my rhythm guitar at the end of the solo, the mix would jump back down to 15%. So even though the reverb was still going, the mix would suddenly drop off substantially. So that actually sounded almost as if I was, bypassing a reverb block with no trails enabled. Like you would still hear sort of an abrupt change to the reverb. So the way I figured to solve that problem is to have a reverb block that's on for my rhythm guitar, and when I switch to lead guitar, this one shuts off, this one shuts on. So the reverb that kicks on, the bigger reverb that's for the lead guitar, is obviously earlier in the chain because I want that feeding both outputs. And so the stereo reverb that's at the end, because this is sort of a stack, this is sort of my rhythm guitar reverb, but then is getting a second reverb sent through it when I switch to lead. I've got this one set kind of relatively mellow, I guess, if that's the word, so that when this reverb kicks on and then feeds through this one, it's not overpowering. And I think if you were to hear it in isolation, it probably sounds like a lot of reverb, but when you're listening to it in the context of a full mix with the band, it sits right where it should, and it sounds pretty good. So that's how I'm using the Helix and the amp together. The nice thing about the Helix is that it allows you to do something like this. It's almost kind of like having a tube amp and a Captor X or something like that. I mean, obviously, just to be clear, a Captor X is a load box, so it allows you to run your tube amp without a speaker at all. The Helix obviously doesn't do that. You still need the speaker. You still need that load on your tube amp if it is in fact a tube amp. But the Helix allows me to kind of use my tube amplifier to get my guitar tone, but still send a direct to front of house XLR feed, still incorporate some stereo effects to give myself a bigger sound. And I still get a little bit of kind of stage volume from the amp, which I obviously can control. So it's kind of the best of everything, I feel like, in this scenario. Hopefully that answers any questions you might have. If not, leave me a comment. Thanks.